Welcome and hello. This is a HEC-RAS controller exercise number 1. It's called Printing Node Data. In this exercise, we'll utilize the geometry getNodes subroutine, as well as a number of other subroutines, to display the node data for the selected river and selected reach. Since this is an exercise, we're going to start from the beginning. I'm going to show you every step on the screen, and if you're interested to follow along, you should be able to do that just fine. Go ahead and get your HEC-RAS up and running. Also have a Microsoft Excel file ready to go, saved as a .xlsm file for macros. We'll return to the Excel in a little bit, but first half of this exercise, we're going to be sketching out a 1D river reach with a couple different rivers and reaches and a couple cross sections and bridges as well. So let's start from the beginning. And here we go. File, new project. I'm going to navigate to where I'm saving my projects. Okay, I already have one project in this directory. I'm going to call this project 2 and then click OK. I'm going to be using English units for this project, so click OK. All right, now it's time to define the geometry. So go up to Edit, Geometric Data, and then I'm going to click on River Reach and just begin sketching out a river and sketch it in the direction from upstream to downstream. So just do single left clicks as you move the mouse, and then finally a double click towards the end of the reach. And then we're going to have to call this a specific river name and reach name. I'll call this River A and Reach 1. Okay. And then click OK to that. Now I'm going to have a second river that's going to be a tributary that's going to converge at this river 1 at a certain location. And then finally, those two rivers will continue flowing downstream. Okay, so I'm going to click on River Reach again, start at the upstream most location of the second river reach, and then begin clicking. And then let's go ahead and zoom in. Oops, hold on a second. I'm going to go to my schematics and just increase this a little bit. As you can tell, this is not geo-referenced, so we'll take care of the distances once we define the cross sections. Okay, so that should allow me to zoom in a little bit closer. Hold down Shift if you want to pan. I just want to make sure that I get this location correct. So click, click, and one final zoom in here, pan over, and double click. Okay, I think that'll look right. We'll see what the cross sections look like. This is going to be not River A, but River B, and it's also going to be Reach 1. Click OK. Now it's asking me, do I want to split River A, the first river I sketched in, into two parts and set a junction right here? The answer is yes. So the downstream portion of this River A is still going to be called River A, but I'm going to call it Reach 2. Click OK. Now, if we wanted to give the junction a name, what should that be called? How about just JNCT and OK. So here is the junction. This is the confluence or the convergence of the two rivers. They're all flowing downstream from here. And if I zoom out, I should see my two rivers. All right, so that looks good. Let's go ahead and add some cross sections now. So I'm going to click on the cross section editor. We first need to decide which river and which reach. So let's start at River A except Reach 2. That's the downstream portion right here. I'm going to click on Options, Add New Cross Section. I'm going to start at the bottom of the reach. So I will say River Station 0 is the very first cross section I want to create and begin my edits for. I can type in or paste in station elevation data. So that's what I'm going to use right there. Zeros for the downstream distance to the next cross section. I'll just be generic and say 0.04 from my Manning's roughness. We're not actually going to run this simulation. What we're going to do is select a river and a reach and then get all of the node data. But we're still a ways off from all of that. Okay, the bank station is going to be 20 and 90. Let's click on Apply Data. Here is the preview over here to the right. If you don't see it, you can click on this button. But that is our cross section. I'm going to now go Options, Copy Current Cross Section, and I'm going to say this distance is, we'll say 400 feet. So I'm going to say 400 right here. This is still River A, Reach 2. That's correct. I'll click OK. So I'm going to type in 400 here for the distance to the next downstream cross section. And then also, if I had, say, a 0.1% slope, I want to increase my elevations at this upstream cross section. We're currently editing. So go Options, Adjust Elevation, and we'll go with a 0.4 foot increase and apply data. Okay, let's use this exact same cross section for the downstream most cross section of River A reach 1 and river B reach 1. So to do that, very quick, go Options, copy current cross section. Now let's stay with river A for now, but reach 1. This is going to be river station 0. Okay. And we'll say, for instance, this distance is, I don't know, 600 feet. So I'm going to make a copy of the current cross section and then create an upstream most cross section at the very upstream most end of river A reach 1, which is 600 feet upstream. Oh, actually, one thing I need to do here is change this to 0 first before I make a copy and then apply, because I'm on river A, reach 1. Now I'll go ahead and copy of the current cross section, river A, reach 1, that's correct, and this will be 600. We'll click OK. So distance downstream here, now it needs to be 600, left overbank channel, right overbank, and then I'm going to increase the elevation by, how about 0. Oops, sorry, I just fat fingered it. Adjust the elevation 0.6 and okay. Okay, that looks good. Let's click apply data. I'm going to exit this to make sure the cross sections look correct. I haven't added any cross sections to river B reach 1 yet. Let's go and add interpolated cross sections now for this river A. So I'm going to go up to Tools, Cross Section Interpolation within a reach. So first, I guess river A reach 1 every 100 feet, please. Interpolate and close. Boom, those have been added. Now let's do the same thing for river A reach 2. Tools, Interpolate within a reach. Then I'll select reach 2 now, and also 100 feet, interpolate, and close. All right, so we're almost done. Let's go ahead and add the cross sections for river B. So let's go cross section editor, river A, reach 1. I'm going to select the downstream most cross section. That's a good one to make a copy of because the downstream distance is 0. The cross station elevation data is exactly what I want to use. So let's go Options, copy the current cross section. I'm going to be selecting a different river this time, river B, reach 1, correct, and that will be at river station 0. Okay, this distance right here, I'm just kind of eyeballing it. We'll say this is, say, 500 feet. So I'll go copy the current cross section, river B, reach 1, that's correct. I'll say 500 feet. Okay, and add 500 feet here, and here, and here, and then we'll add some elevation, specifically 0.5 feet. So the slope is going to be the same for all of the 3 river reaches at 0.1%. All right, so that's good for the cross-section data. Okay, I got to do the interpolation as well. Well, I mean, I don't have to, but it will look better in the final result if we add some more structures, or nodes, I should say. So we'll go to Tools, Cross-section within a reach. Now this time we want river B reach 1. Okay, it's already selected for me. That's cool. 100 feet, interpolate, and close. Now what I want to do is add a bridge. We'll say it's at river station 350 here on river A reach 1, and then we'll pretend like the road curves and it actually cuts across river B reach 2, river station 250. Okay, so to do that, I'll go with bridge / culvert, options, add a bridge, and then let's see, it looks like I'm selected river B reach 1, that's fine. So we'll put it at 250. So this is the river station 250. Okay. Now, I'm not going to get too crazy with adding piers and abutments, but I will add a deck so it appears on the plan view. We'll go with a distance of 30 and then a width of 40, so that should be centered between the 2 cross sections. And then the data for station and high chord, low chord, I'll just say low chord will be 30 feet, and it'll span the entire 110 foot cross section. We'll give it a upstream and downstream embankment slope of 3 to 1 and click OK. All right, so there is the bridge deck. We'll see that in the plan view in just a moment. But what I want to do now is copy the exact same bridge over to cross at river A reach 1, except center it at 350. So I'll go Options and then copy bridge. Now instead of river B, I'll go river A reach 1 and 350 and click OK. All right, so let's go ahead and close that and see if they appear. Yep, they did. Here's a bridge. Here's a bridge. We have 3 reaches, 2 rivers, 2 bridges, and a number of cross sections. So this is, I think, good enough for our geometry file and gives us enough variation for us to actually see some meaningful results when we build this tool in the HEC RAS controller in Microsoft Excel. So let's go File, save the geometry data. We'll just call this base and OK. And we'll return to this sort of at the end just to confirm our results are correct. But for the time being, let's bring up our controller. You want to make sure that you have the developer tab added as a ribbon option, and then click on Visual Basic, and then make sure you have added HEC-RAS, whatever version, as a tool reference. And let's build all of our code in this exercise within sheet 1 worksheet. So I'm just going to double click on sheet 1, and boom, we are ready to rock and roll. The 3 HEC-RAS subroutines we're going to be using is geometry get rivers, geometry get reaches, and then geometry get nodes, in that order. So where you can find that data is go up to View, Object Browser. You're going to want to select the Okay, I don't know why it keeps disappearing on me. I gotta go ahead and add HEC-RAS as a reference to this project. So it's right here. Okay, looks like it was ready to go. It was just unchecked for some reason. Click OK. Okay, so here is RAS 6.6 because I'm using version 6.6. Click on HEC-RAS controller. And now I want to scroll down to geometry underscore get stuff. Okay, here we are. Geometry underscore get rivers, geometry underscore get reaches, and then the last one is geometry underscore get nodes. Oh, just right there, just above it. So these three, 1, 2, and 3. If I click on one of these subroutines, you can see in the bottom, it gives me the subroutine definition, specifically what is the name and the data type of the parameters it is expecting. So this right here is what we'll be using for geometry get rivers. This is for geometry get reaches, and this is for geometry get nodes. All right, so let's close that up and start with our first subroutine. In fact, before we even have a subroutine at all, what I'm going to do is paste in the global reference to our controller, our HEC-RAS controller, which we will define and then use to open up our project, get the required data, and then quit for each of our subroutines. I'm not convinced that's the best way to do it yet, but it's not the worst. So let's go with that. Next, what I want to do is go to Excel. I'm using Excel sort of as my form, my location to my user interface. I'm not actually building a form per se, which is fine and perhaps preferred in some cases. But what I'm going to do is call this select node location. And then let's just make that bold. Okay. And then we'll have to select the river first. And then after that, the reach. Let me make this a little bit bigger just by zooming in. Okay. And then let's actually make this click on home and then align that to the right. So we are going to have a drop down here to select which river, A or B. And then based on the selection of the river, we're going to use the subroutine, the geometry get reaches, to get the list of reaches. Once we select the reach, that's going to automatically invoke the geometry get nodes routine. And we're going to have the data for the nodes for that selected river and reach printing out down below here. So this is one of many different things you can use the HEC-RAS controller for. This is how we're using it in exercise number 1. All right, so we're going to programmatically add the drop down, so we don't have to do that now. But one more thing I want to do at this moment is add a button to reset the form. So I'll go up to the developer tab and then click on insert. This first button here is to add a button. So we'll just go ahead and sketch a button in right there. We don't have a macro to assign to that button yet, so we'll come back and do that later. But I do want to rename this right now. This is just text or a label on the button, so there's no functionality as to what I type. I'm just going to call this reset. All right. So when you click the reset button, that'll reset everything, and we'll go from there. The first step we need to do when adding code to our controller is to look up the rivers. And with that list of rivers, we'll create a drop down here, and then the reaches, and then the nodes. So that's the order of operations. Here is our worksheet 1. We already have these 2 lines. I'm going to just paste in the first subroutine, and let me dedent it so it's easier to read. All right, so what we're looking at here is a subroutine I'm calling populate rivers dropdown. And it does just what I described it as. It's going to grab all of the rivers, just river A and river B, and it's going to create a dropdown in that particular cell, which is row 3, column 4. Now, you may not be used to the R1C1 reference style, so get used to it because I'm going to be using it part of the time. I believe that it's important to know both R1C1 and then the typical letters across the top for the columns, just like being familiar with metric and US customary unit system. So some of my lessons and exercises will use R1C1 reference style, including this exercise. All right, so back to Visual Basic. What I'm doing in this block of code is just clearing out data. So this line right here is going to be clearing out these two cells right here, and then this line of code is going to be clearing out my main results, which is right down here, these three columns. Okay, let's go back to the code. Next, what we're going to do is define that HEC-RAS controller object. Well, I mean, we've already defined it up here, I suppose, dimensioned it, but now we're actually going to assign it to this project. CON is going to be the name of my object that represents a HEC-RAS controller class instance. We don't have to bring it to screen. That's why I have this commented up for show RAS. After that, we're going to get the river names. So we're passing in the river count. That's just an integer or long. And then the river names is going to be an array of strings. So that's going to be river A and river B. After that, what I'm doing is preparing values here because the drop-down options that we're going to see is going to look like this. It's going to have the river name, and then in parentheses, it's going to have what I'm calling the river ID because we need to reference that river ID in the following step when we need to determine which reaches to display in the reaches dropdown. So you're welcome to pause the video, take a screenshot, whatever, and copy this if you're interested. But after that, we're going to list all of the rivers in a dropdown in cell row 3, column 4. So when you see something like this, cells 3, 4, that the first number is the row number, the second is the column number. River options right here, this is basically converting the river num names array to a string that is separated by the second parameter, which is a comma in this case. And then river options is used right down here. This is the list of options that is used in the form validation. I could have done a combo box, but I just went with validation. So there's different ways to create dropdowns within Excel. And I'm not an expert on that. I'm not trying to convince anyone that this is the best way or the only way. All right, the very last step right here is to close HEC-RAS so we don't have any lingering processes or daemons, or that's Linux. Services is what it's called in Windows, so that we don't have to deal with that. Also worth mentioning, this with keyword and with keyword allows you to execute multiple statements on a single object without repeatedly referencing the object. And then me right here, this is basically just a placeholder for the specific scope that you're working within. So right now I'm working within worksheet 1. Instead of me, I could just reference the actual worksheet. I could say worksheet and then sheet 1 or whatever the name of the worksheet is, but it's a little bit easier to just write me. So if you ever see me, again, that's what that means. Me refers to the object whose code module contains the running procedure, usually a worksheet or a form. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if that runs. I'm going to save it. And then this subroutine right here is what I'm going to assign to that reset button so that when we click reset, it's not only going to clear the data, but it's going to populate the rivers dropdown. So again, save, back to Excel, right click on the reset button, click on assign macro, and boom, here is the macro, sheet 1, populate rivers dropdown, and click OK. All right, so let's click off and then let's give it a shot. Click on reset. Okay, so let's now click on the rivers dropdown. It looks like we have successfully returned our river A and river B as the two options to select for our rivers. Now over here on the right, you can see in parentheses, we have the river ID 1 and 2 for river A and B respectively. So that looks good. And we are off to a good start. So now what we want to do is if we select a river, nothing's going to happen. I mean, obviously the text is displaying in this cell, but now what we want to have happen is we want the list of reaches for that river to display in a drop down right here for us to select. Now for river A, we would expect there to be a reach 1 and a reach 2, but if we happen to select river B, we would only see a reach 1. All right, so we're going to go back to our Visual Basic and scroll down here. Let's go to the very bottom. So what I'm going to do is paste in a worksheet change event right here. It's called private sub worksheet change by value target as range. It looks a little cryptic, but basically what it's going to do is continuously check to see if certain cells have changed, specifically row 3, column 4. That's what I'm most interested in. And if it does change, I'm going to call the subroutine here, which is called populate reaches dropdown. Just like we had previously, we had populate rivers dropdown. Now, populate reaches dropdown is the next subroutine that I'm going to display. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I've already added this in because the next step is going to be looking at when we select a reach to go ahead and get the node data. So don't worry about this part right now. What we're going to add is our populate reaches dropdown. That's a subroutine. So we'll go ahead and just put it right here. And let me go ahead and dedent. All right. So let's talk about it. First, we're going to clear the results if there were any results, not necessarily would be. And then as before, we're going to open up our project. We're using the same con as our controller, that's just the name of the object, the HEC-RAS controller. Next, we're going to be getting the riverId. So what I'm doing is I'm getting the text from the cell row 3, column 4, which is river A and then parentheses 1 or river B, parentheses 2. And then I'm going to parse out that 1 or 2 from within the parentheses just by identifying the position of the open parentheses and the closed parentheses. And then the riverId is that number. I'm converting it to a long, and it's going to be the text between the position of the open and closed parentheses. All right, further down, we're going to get the reach names. This is similar to getting the river names. This is where we actually use the HEC-RAS controller. We're calling this geometry get reaches subroutine, and then we're passing it the riverId, which is the whole point of getting it from up here. And then the reach count and reach name is similar to the previous subroutine where we had a river count and river names. Reach names is an array that's going to be the same length as the reach count value. Right, and then we're going to prepare the values just as before. So what I'm doing is for each value in the dropdown, it's going to look like this right here. It's going to be the name of the reach and then space, and then in parentheses, I'm going to return the reach ID. Okay, so this is a similar looking subroutine as before, similar format. At the very bottom, we're going to list out the reaches in that cell at row 4, column 4. And I'm basically doing the same thing as before. I'm calling it reach options now instead of river options. It's going to go in the validation for the 2 different steps, and then finally going to close the application. All right, so let's see if that works. I'm going to save and then close, or go back to Excel rather. Click on reset. Okay. It took a minute, but let's go ahead and see if this works. We're going to select how about river A, and then okay, we have oh, I see. So I added this too soon. I'm just going to click OK and then make sure to hit stop or reset. And then I'm going to just comment out a call to the subroutine because it doesn't exist yet. So let's see if that was our only problem. So reset, save, back to Excel, click on the reset button. Okay, that was good. That was quicker. So how about River A? All right, now reach. All right, cool. So we have our options for reach 1 and reach 2, and then those are ID 1 and 2. Now, if we selected river B, that is riverId 2. Now, for the reaches, we only have one option here for reach 1. So that should be proof that I'm not faking it. This really is the HEC-RAS controller talking to the HEC-RAS via these procedures, specifically geometry get rivers and geometry get reaches. Okay, so 2 down, 1 to go as far as the number of calls using the HEC-RAS controller. Now what we want to have happen is when we select a reach, we want the node data to display down here. Now that doesn't happen yet because we haven't wrote the code for it, but let's go back to our Visual Basic and then scroll down to the bottom. Now, one thing I wanted to simplify in this whole process was getting the riverId and the reachId. So right here, I'm going to paste in 3 new functions, which is going to make our lives easier, trust me. Previously, we already got the riverId, and then this text right here should look familiar. These are 3 functions I'm specifically writing to get the riverId and get the reachId, which all they do is assign a row and column of 3, 4 and 4, 4, and then they call this get riverId. Oops, this should be get reachId. Okay, right here, and reachId. Okay, that works. So when you're writing a function, the name of the function within the function serves as a return keyword. So we're going to be returning this right here, which is a call to the getID function. It reads in the row and the column values. It returns along. And then we've already seen this before. Basically, it's just grabbing the text in that specific row column. We're searching for the open and close parentheses, and then we're parsing out to return the number between the open and close parentheses. So with this simplification or abstraction or encapsulation, whatever the word is, we can go back to our function where we get the riverId. Okay, I'm right here inside the populate reaches dropdown, and then right here I have get riverId. I can just highlight all that and then paste in a simplified version where we're getting the riverId by calling get riverId. Now, the greater savings for this new way of getting the ID shows up in this function, get node data, or this is a subroutine, excuse me. Get node data is right here. So let's take a look at this. Again, we're going to clear out the results from the node table down below. We're going to instantiate a HEC RAS controller object called con. Now here is the real savings. It's very quick and easy to just get the riverId and the reachId based on the selections that we made in the dropdown for river and reach. Okay, further down here, get the node data. This is where we're actually going to call our geometry underscore get nodes. It takes 5 different parameters, riverId, reachId, and then what it's actually going to assign within the subroutine, because it's reading in these parameters by reference, is the node count, the river station, and node types. Those are just the variable names that I'm sending it, which are in the form of long, string array, and string array, respectively. So down below here, this is where I'm actually just going to print out the results. This right here is just the column headers. So I'm going to say node number, river station, and node type. Those are the 3 results that we're going to return from this geometry underscore get nodes procedure call. And then down below here, we're going to loop through our results. The node out here will be however many nodes are in that river and reach. And then we're just going to print out the data right here. You go ahead and check that out if you want, but let's just see if it works. So I'll click on the save, I'll click Excel, and then let's go ahead and start by clicking on reset. Okay, let's select our river A. Okay, then how about reach 1 and nothing? Okay, off camera, I figured out what the problem was. I need to go back and uncomment out this call get nodes data. Sorry about that if you were struggling yourselves, but this should make it work now. So I'll click on the reset and then save. Let's go back to Excel, click on reset here. So let's select our river A, and then reach 1. And then, oh, I put a breakpoint in here off camera, so sorry about that. So reset, and 3rd time's the charm, river A, and reach 1. Boom, here are our results. Looks like we have 7 nodes. So there's a node for every cross section, and you can see that's at 500, 400, 300, 200, 100, and 0. And then our bridge right here is at river station 250. So node number, river station, and node type. We could have wrote in cross section here for all the cross sections, but it looks like it's not doing that. All right, let's check out reach 2. So sticking with river A, if I select reach 2, boom, here are the results. We have the cross sections from 0 up to 400. And then we know the node type is cross section, but if we had inline structure or lateral structure or bridge, we would see that designation over here in this column 5 for node type. And then just for good measure, let's check out our river B. Okay, so I need to clear that out because we don't have a reach 2 for river B. Let me just click the reset button. Okay, so a little fine tuning still required, but all good. River B, and then our only reach is reach 1. And this looks a little different. Now we're going from 0 up to 400 with the bridge crossing right here at 350. It looks like it's not getting the upstream most cross section because this actually goes up to 500. Okay, let me just select reach 1. And then, yeah, it's only going up to 500. Okay, so for some reason, it's not showing me the upstream most cross section. That's something I could check out, figure out later. But anyway, for the most part, what we did in this exercise was build a little tool within Excel, use the VBA and the HEC RAS controller object in class and the procedures in order to retrieve the rivers, the reaches, and the different nodes for the selected river and reach.